You have nothing left, Mom. It's all mine now. Emily's voice, my own daughter's, echoed in the small, empty room of what used to be my home. Those words, uttered with a coldness that still chills me, were the final blow. My inheritance, the legacy of a lifetime of work and sacrifice, had been stolen. My heart, already in pieces, felt betrayed, abandoned, and penniless. The injustice was a suffocating, agonizing weight on my soul. If you've ever felt the pain of betrayal from someone you loved most, if you've ever found yourself lost, without hope, then this story is for you. Please, subscribe to the channel and leave your like so more people can hear about how life can surprise us, for better or worse. I, Sarah, at 65, suddenly found myself in a tiny rented apartment, with only a few boxes of belongings and the bitter memory of a life that had slipped away. The family home, the savings, my mother's jewelry, everything had vanished, swallowed by Emily's insatiable ambition. She, my only daughter, to whom I dedicated every fiber of my being, had left me destitute. With each sunrise, the sun entered through the window, but brought no warmth, only the relentless light that revealed the harshness of my new reality. I wondered how we got to this point, how a mother's unconditional love could be so brutally crushed by the greed of her own flesh and blood. The humiliation was constant, the pain, a faithful companion. My life had always been guided by dedication to family. From a very young age, I worked tirelessly to build a secure future. My late husband John and I were a team. He, a civil engineer, and I, a history teacher, shared the dream of offering Emily everything we didn't have. We lived in a charming Boston suburb, in a house John had built with his own hands, brick by brick. Every corner of that home held memories of laughter, family dinners, study nights, and celebrations. Emily was the center of our universe. I remember when she was little, with her curious blonde hair and blue eyes, always asking, why? I took her to the science museum, to the public library, encouraging her thirst for knowledge. John, in turn, taught her how to fix things, how to garden, how to value manual labor. We spared no effort for her education. We paid for the best private school, invested in piano and ballet lessons, and later financed her law degree at Harvard University. We wanted her to have every opportunity to be independent, to build a fulfilling life. John always said, "Our greatest inheritance for Emily is not money, but the education and values that will make her a strong and just woman." He was a man of principles, and his will reflected that. Everything would be divided equally between me and Emily, with the caveat that I would have lifelong usufruct of the house and a portion of the savings, ensuring my security in old age. Emily, in turn, would receive her share to start her career and adult life. It was a fair plan, conceived with love and wisdom. I never imagined that greed could corrupt a heart so young, so loved. John's death, 2 years ago, was the first major blow. He passed away unexpectedly, leaving an immense void in our lives. Emily, a freshly graduated lawyer, took on a protector role in the following months. She offered to handle all the probate bureaucracy, asset management, and communication with the family lawyer, Mr. Thompson. I, still in deep mourning, trusted her blindly. After all, she was my daughter, and she was a lawyer. Who better to handle legal matters? Emily moved into the house, claiming it would be easier for her to manage everything closely and keep me company. I, naive, saw this as a gesture of affection. She began to convince me that it was necessary to reorganize the assets to optimize taxes and avoid future bureaucracy. I signed documents she presented to me without reading the fine print, trusting her word. "It's just a formality, Mom," she would say with a reassuring smile. "I'm taking care of everything, so you don't have to worry." Gradually, things began to change. My bank accounts, once accessible, became complicated. The house, which was mine by right of usufruct, became managed by her. Emily began to suggest that I should simplify my life, perhaps move to a smaller apartment, as the house was too big for one person. With each suggestion, a pang of discomfort, but I ignored them, attributing them to her excessive zeal. The final blow came when Mr. Thompson, the family lawyer, called me for a meeting. He, with an expression of deep sadness, informed me that, legally, I no longer owned anything. Emily, through a series of legal maneuvers and documents I had unknowingly signed, had transferred all assets to her name, including the house and savings. I was, in fact, destitute. That day, my world completely collapsed. The pain of betrayal was excruciating, the humiliation unbearable. I had been used, manipulated, and discarded by my own daughter. The discovery of John's protection clause and moral legacy was like an electric shock that ran through my body, transforming paralyzing pain into renewed energy. I was no longer the defenseless, dispossessed widow. I was the guardian of a legacy, the bearer of a truth that Emily had tried to bury under her greed. That piece of paper, yellowed by time, was my sword and my shield. The first thing I did was call Mr. Thompson, the family lawyer. His voice, which had previously sounded resigned when informing me of my destitution, now carried a tone of surprise and, dare I say, admiration upon hearing about the addendum. He confirmed the document's validity, explaining that John, with his usual foresight, had registered an authenticated copy in a bank vault, ensuring its inviolability. With legal certainty in hand, I scheduled a meeting with Emily. I chose a discreet coffee shop downtown, a neutral place, away from curious eyes. When she arrived, punctual and impeccable in her lawyer's suit, with that confident smile I knew so well, I felt a pang of sadness. She was my daughter, but the woman in front of me was a stranger, shaped by ambition. "Mom, what's so urgent?" she asked with thinly veiled impatience. I took a deep breath, held the cigar box I had brought, and placed it on the table. "Emily, your father left something for you. Something he wanted you to receive at a very specific time." Curiosity flickered in her eyes, but soon gave way to suspicion. "What are you talking about, Mom? Probate has already closed." I ignored her interruption and pulled the yellowed envelope from the box, sliding it across the table towards her. "Read it," I said, my voice firm, without a trace of the fragility she expected. Emily picked up the envelope, her eyes scanning the title, Protection Clause and Moral Legacy. Her face paled as she read, and the confident smile vanished, replaced by an expression of shock and finally fury. This is a farce, a setup. Dad would never do this," she shouted, slamming her hand on the table, drawing the attention of some customers. "Your father did, Emily. He foresaw your greed. He foresaw that you would try to dispossess me, and he acted to protect not only me, but also his memory and the values he held so dear." The silence that followed was heavy, filled only by Emily's ragged breathing. The tables had turned. Emily's fury erupted like a storm. "You're crazy, Mom. This is your invention, a pathetic attempt to reverse what is legally mine," she screamed, ignoring the curious glances around us. I, however, remained calm. "It's not an invention, Emily. Mr. Thompson has already confirmed the validity of the addendum, and the letter your father left for you, explaining his reasons, is with him. It will be delivered as soon as the independent audit begins." The mention of the audit and John's letter hit her hard. Her eyes, previously full of rage, now showed a flicker of panic. She knew John's handwriting was unmistakable, and that the audit would reveal the extent of her maneuvers. Emily tried one last desperate move. "Mom, please don't do this. Think of our family, my reputation. I'm a lawyer. This could destroy my career." The irony of her words struck me. She had destroyed our family and my life without hesitation, and now she was pleading for her career. "You should have thought of that before you left me destitute, Emily. The consequences of your actions are yours, not mine." I stood up, leaving her alone with the cigar box and the envelope, and walked out of the coffee shop with my head held high. From that moment on, the legal battle began. Mr. Thompson, with John's authorization, initiated the audit process. News quickly spread in Boston's legal circles. A young lawyer, a Harvard graduate, being investigated for dispossessing her own mother. Emily's reputation, built on a foundation of false virtues, began to crumble. Her clients, upon hearing the story, started to distance themselves. The law firm where she worked, concerned about its image, placed her on paid leave, a euphemism for suspension. She tried to call me countless times, pleading, threatening, but I did not give in. With each ignored call, each piece of news about her decline, I felt a bittersweet mix of vindication and sadness. It was painful to see my daughter reap what she sowed, but it was necessary. John's lesson was unfolding, and I was merely the instrument of his justice. The independent audit, conducted by a team of forensic accountants, revealed the extent of the web of lies and manipulations Emily had woven. It wasn't just John's inheritance. She had diverted funds from joint accounts, manipulated investments, and even forged signatures on some minor documents. The final report was a dossier of her greed, irrefutable proof of her bad faith. With each new discovery, Mr. Thompson informed me with a tone of increasing indignation. "Ms. Sarah, your daughter not only dispossessed you, but she did so with impressive coldness and calculation. She used all her legal knowledge to circumvent the law and deceive you." The local press, always eager for a scandal involving prominent figures, began to report on the case. "Harvard lawyer accused of dispossessing her own mother," screamed the headlines. The story, with its elements of family betrayal and greed, quickly went viral on social media. Emily, who once flaunted a life of luxury and success, was now the target of public scorn. Her college classmates, her friends, all distanced themselves. The pressure was immense. She tried to defend herself publicly, claiming I was senile and being manipulated by unscrupulous lawyers, but the evidence was overwhelming. I, on the other hand, began to feel the weight of the situation. The vindication was real, but the pain of watching my daughter self-destruct was excruciating. I didn't want to see her in prison, only for her to learn her lesson. John's true legacy was not money, but integrity. And Emily was failing miserably at that test. John's charity foundation, once a secret, now gained notoriety. People, moved by the story, began to make donations, transforming the tragedy into an act of kindness. Emily's inheritance, which would be reverted to the foundation, would become a beacon of hope for many vulnerable elderly people. The irony was palpable. Emily's greed was, unintentionally, boosting her father's charity. The day of the final judgment arrived, and the courtroom was packed. Journalists, curious onlookers, and supporters of John's foundation gathered to witness the outcome of the case. Emily, visibly distraught, with deep dark circles under her eyes and a slumped posture, looked like a shadow of the confident woman she had been. I, on the contrary, felt a strange calm. It wasn't joy, but a sense of peace, that the truth would finally be revealed. The judge, a man with an austere demeanor, delivered the verdict. Emily would be disbarred, losing her license to practice law, and all of John's inheritance, including the house and savings, would be reverted to the foundation. Furthermore, she would be ordered to pay a substantial fine for moral damages and legal costs. After the sentence was read, Mr. Thompson, my lawyer, approached Emily. He held John's sealed letter, the last legacy from a father to a daughter who had lost her way. "Emily," he said, his voice echoing in the silent courtroom, "your father instructed me to deliver this letter to you, and only to you should this clause be activated." Emily took the letter with trembling hands, her eyes fixed on the envelope. She broke the wax seal and began to read, her features contorting in a mixture of shock sadness, and perhaps regret. The lawyer's final words to her were not about money, but about the true value of life. "Emily," Mr. Thompson continued, his voice now softer but still firm, "your father always believed that a person's greatest wealth is not in what they accumulate, but in the character they build and the relationships they cultivate. He hoped you would learn that greed corrodes the soul and that love and integrity are the only assets that truly matter. He wanted you to know that, although money can be stolen, character is inalienable, and that the true inheritance of a family is unconditional love, not material wealth." Emily broke down in tears, the crumpled letter in her hands. John's words, delivered through the lawyer, had hit their mark. Justice had been served, but the pain of that lesson would be a lifelong scar. 2 years have passed since that day in court. My life, which seemed to have fallen apart, has been rebuilt on more solid and meaningful foundations. The family home, now under the administration of John's foundation, has been transformed into a support center for the elderly, a place of warmth and dignity. I, in turn, became an active volunteer, finding purpose and joy in helping others who, like me, had faced adversity. My small apartment, once a symbol of my loss, is now a peaceful refuge, filled with John's memories and the certainty that his legacy of kindness lives on. Emily, on the other hand, faced the harsh consequences of her choices. Without a law license and with her reputation destroyed, she struggled to find a new path. I learned through others that she tried a few jobs, but the shadow of her past followed her. She lost everything that greed had led her to seek: status, luxury, admiration. The last time I saw her was from a distance, in a supermarket. She looked thinner, older, and her eyes, once so full of ambition, now carried a weight of sadness and regret. There were no words, just a brief glance that said more than any conversation. Emily's story and mine became a powerful reminder that character is true wealth, and that greed in the end always exacts its price. John, even after his death, had given me the greatest inheritance, the strength to overcome betrayal and the wisdom to value what truly matters. His foundation flourished, helping countless lives, a testament that kindness always prevails. If this story touched you, if it made you reflect on the true value of things, please leave your comment below. Share your own experiences and what you learned from them. Like this video, so more people can be inspired by this journey of overcoming injustice, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories that remind us that, even in the greatest adversities, hope and character can guide us to a new beginning.